The sun dipped low over the horizon, casting a golden glow across the sprawling plains where the wind whispered secrets through the tall grass. Dust swirled around the legs of weary travelers, and the faint sound of horses' hooves clattered against the wooden boards of the small town's main street. It was the kind of evening where every shadow seemed to carry a story, and every glance held the weight of hidden truths. Jonah Kincaid, a man known across the region for his sharp eyes and quiet strength, walked into the town's main square with a measured stride, his boots kicking up tiny clouds of dust. His reputation preceded him, a man who never let debts go unpaid, who had a code stricter than any law. Yet beneath the rugged exterior, there was a softness in him, a careful restraint, a memory of life once filled with laughter and warmth. Tonight, that memory would be stirred in ways he could never anticipate. At the edge of the square, a commotion drew his attention. A group of men, rough-handed and greedy-eyed, were arguing with a small figure, a girl no more than 16, her hands trembling, her dress tattered, and eyes wide with fear. Jonah's instinct told him to stay back, to let the townsfolk handle it. But something in the girl's gaze stopped him, a silent plea that spoke louder than any shouted demand. He watched as the leader of the group, a man named Harrow, barked out a sentence that made Jonah's stomach tighten. "Take her as payment for the debt," Harrow said, his voice dripping with contempt. "Her family owes me, and if they can't pay, she will." The words hung in the air, cruel and final. Jonah felt a surge of anger, but also an unsettling pull he couldn't explain. He stepped forward, his presence commanding without a word. "I'll not take what's not mine," Jonah said firmly, his voice carrying across the square. "She is not payment for anything. Let her go," Harrow sneered, stepping closer. "And who's going to stop me, Kincaid? You the same man who bends for no one? You'll learn, boy. Life doesn't forgive debts. Not here, not ever." Jonah's eyes didn't waver. There was a fire in them, one that spoke of protection, of a silent promise that no injustice would pass while he stood near. But it wasn't just his moral code that made him hesitate. It was something in the girl herself. He noticed the resilience in her stance, the way she didn't shrink completely, the faint glimmer of defiance that even her fear couldn't fully mask. Her name was Lila, though Jonah wouldn't know it until later. She had been caught in a trap of circumstance, one built by her father's misjudgment and the cruel hand of fate. She had wandered alone for days, surviving on scraps, avoiding the shadowed corners of the town where Harrow's men waited like vultures. And now she stood in the heart of the square, trembling but unbroken, staring at Jonah as though she recognized something familiar in him, a protector, a silent ally, perhaps even a savior. Jonah clenched his jaw. "You don't understand," he said quietly, almost to himself. "I can't take her, even if I wanted to." But as he looked again, really looked, he felt a shift deep within him. There was something in her eyes, something that reminded him of his own past, of innocence lost too soon, of promises made and broken. He saw fear, yes, but he also saw hope. And that hope struck a chord he thought had long been silent. Harrow, noticing Jonah's hesitation, laughed, a low, cruel sound that echoed off the wooden buildings. "I see it now, Kincaid. You're afraid. Or maybe you're already softening. This girl, she's worth more than all the money in your pockets. But she'll cost you nothing if you refuse. Stand aside or be left behind." Jonah stepped closer, the muscles in his shoulders coiling. But his mind was elsewhere, on Lila, on the weight of fate and on the inexplicable pull he felt toward this girl, who was not yet a stranger but also not yet fully known, for reasons he could not yet name. He felt responsible, as if the universe had placed her in his path for a reason. And then it happened. Their eyes met and everything changed. Jonah saw something in her, a spark, a light that refused to be extinguished despite hunger, fear, and the harsh cruelty of the world. That single look shifted something deep inside him, an awakening he had not felt in years. It was a recognition of vulnerability, of innocence, but also of strength. And with that recognition, his refusal faltered. Not because he accepted Harrow's terms, but because he understood that protecting her was no longer a choice. It was inevitable. He spoke, voice calm but firm. "If anyone tries to touch her, they'll have to go through me first." Harrow, unnerved by Jonah's unwavering gaze, faltered, then laughed mockingly. "We'll see about that," he spat, before retreating with his men, leaving Jonah and the girl standing alone in the dusty square. For a long moment, Jonah and Lila simply stared at each other. Neither spoke, but a silent understanding passed between them. Jonah had refused at first, yes, but when he truly saw her, the courage in her eyes, the depth of her silent plea, everything changed. And in that change a bond was formed, one that neither time nor circumstance could easily break. As night fell over the town, Jonah guided Lila to the safety of his modest cabin at the edge of the plains. There, under the warm light of a single lantern, he learned her story, the debts, the fear, the lonely nights without food, and the resilience that had kept her alive. He listened without judgment, his own heart opening in ways he hadn't allowed in years. For the first time in a long time, he felt a purpose beyond his reputation, beyond the lonely existence of a man defined by debts and contracts. He felt a duty to protect, to care, to nurture the fragile hope that had survived within her. And Lila, for her part, felt an unfamiliar sense of security in Jonah's presence. She had known only fear and survival for so long that trust was a foreign concept. But Jonah's quiet strength, his unwavering gaze, and the simple truth of his words offered her a glimpse of something she had nearly forgotten: safety, compassion, and the possibility of a new beginning. That night, as the wind sang through the plains and the stars glittered cold and distant above, both of them understood that life had a strange, unpredictable way of bringing people together. Jonah had refused the idea of taking her as payment, but when he truly looked at her, when he saw her not as a debt but as a person, everything changed. And that change, though quiet and subtle, would ripple through both their lives in ways they could not yet imagine. The next morning, the plains glimmered with the soft light of dawn, and Jonah and Lila faced the long road ahead. Harrow's threat lingered like a shadow, but Jonah's resolve was stronger than ever. He taught Lila how to read the subtle signs of the land, to find water where none seemed to exist, and to move with quiet confidence. Each day she grew braver, her fear slowly replaced by trust. Jonah watched her with a quiet awe, realizing that her courage sparked something within him he had long thought dead. When they finally confronted Harrow again, it wasn't fear that guided them. It was the unspoken bond between protector and the one he had vowed to defend. And as Harrow stepped forward, Jonah's gaze met Lila's, and in that moment everything shifted. She was no longer a symbol of debt or danger. She was hope, resilience, and a future neither had dared to imagine. Together, they faced the horizon, stronger than the world that had tried to break them.